I want you to imagine a sound. It's not a pleasant sound. It's this low, rhythmic, industrial thrumming.
Hmm.
Almost like a massive, heavy, metallic machine just grinding away somewhere in the distance. Can you hear it?
I can. It's the sound of friction.
Exactly. It's friction. And I want you to hold that sound in your mind because there is a very specific, I think a very universal human sensation that feels exactly like that noise.
Okay.
You know the feeling. You're lying in bed, it's 3:00 a.m., you're staring at the ceiling, and you just feel this heavy, sinking weight right in the pit of your stomach. It's the realization that you owe something.
The internal ledger is
The
unbalanced.
ledger is in the red, we've messed up, maybe we hurt someone we love, maybe
Right.
we wasted a massive opportunity, or maybe we just did something that violates our own code.
Right.
And the immediate psychological response, it's almost a reflex, it feels like it's hardwired into us, is that we need to pay. There is a debt. And until that debt is paid, there is this grinding friction in the universe.
It's the friction of moral failure. You are, in a sense, grinding against the very gears of reality.
Right. And historically, if you look at how humanity has dealt with this friction, the solution has almost always been, well, transactional.
On a transaction, yes.
We are absolutely obsessed with the concept of atonement. And if you actually look at the etymology of that word, it's really beautiful, but it's also very telling. At one meant
The goal is to be at one again, to repair the breach.
to be at one with the divine or the moral order or just with yourself. But here's the catch. Historically, the method of achieving that unity is usually through some kind of transaction. It's a balance sheet approach. I have incurred a debt through my bad actions, so I need to provide a payment to balance it out.
Which usually means sacrifice.
Precisely. It meant reparation. It meant finding something valuable, a goat, a portion of the harvest, or even a metaphysical concept like personal suffering, and offering it up to satisfy an angry lender. It's this idea that justice is a creditor waiting to be paid.
And that is exactly where we need to hit the pause button. Because the source material we are diving into today, a text titled Divine Restoration, Atonement and Forgiveness in the Quran, proposes a completely different operating system.
A different OS entirely.
Completely different.
Yeah.
It argues that this transactional model where you are, in effect, paying off an angry deity to buy back your safety is actually a fundamental misunderstanding of the mechanism.
So what's the alternative?
The source material presents a model that is less about paying a bank loan and much more about what I would call architectural justice.
Architectural justice. That sounds much more structural. It sounds like engineering.
It is. The thesis here is that we aren't dealing with an emotional lender who is, throwing a tantrum. We're dealing with a high-integrity, law-based system. The text we're analyzing actually calls it the restoration algorithm.
An algorithm.
An algorithm. It shifts the whole focus from an emotional response like pleading with God not to be mad to a systemic self-correction.
So we're moving from please forgive me to how do I fix the machine?
In a sense, yes. We're going to unpack the physics of this system. And I use that word physics deliberately because the vocabulary used in the source material words, like Zanb and Ghafarah, describes what are essentially mechanical forces.
You're not talking about metaphors.
I'm talking about things that act like real-world forces. We're talking about aerodynamic drag. We're talking about protective shielding. We're going to trace the arc from that heavy, grinding friction of failure all the way to what the source describes as the crystalline resonance of tabdil or transformation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I think most of us, regardless of our religious or secular background, we have a default setting for how we think about fixing our mistakes. And it usually involves guilt and punishment and some kind of payment.
And to understand why this restoration algorithm is unique, we first have to survey the landscape. The source material provides a fascinating cross-religious breakdown of how different operating systems, stick with that analogy, handle this error code.
It's like looking at the different ways legal systems handle bankruptcy.
That's a perfect analogy. So you start with, for example, the traditional Christian model.
Right, and the text highlights this one first.
The source describes the Christian model as centered on atonement through substitution, specifically vicarious atonement.
Yeah. The argument there is that the debt of sin is so massive, infinite, essentially, that humanity simply cannot pay it. You can't sacrifice enough goats to fix it.
The debt exceeds your assets.
Exactly. So an external figure, Jesus, pays the debt on behalf of humanity. Justice is satisfied by an external act, And the benefit is received through faith. It's a transfer of the burden.
It's a systemic transfer. The debt is moved from one account to another. Now, you compare that to the Jewish model, which the text focuses on as teshuvah.
Which is usually translated as repentance.
It is, but the root meaning is return.
Which feels much more, I don't know, hands-on.
It is. It's a human-driven effort. It's not about someone else paying the bill for you. It's about the individual stopping the sin, confessing, and this is the crucial part, making direct amends to the people they hurt.
So it's horizontal before it's vertical.
Precisely. You have to fix the horizontal relationships before you can even begin to fix the vertical one with God. You have to go back to the person you wronged and actually make it right.
It's a return to the terms of the contract, in a way.
A return to a state of balance. Then you have the Eastern traditions, which the source categorizes under the laws of karma. In Hinduism, you have something called prayasita.
And what's that involve?
It involves self-purification and various rituals designed to mitigate bad karma. It's an act of cleansing. In Buddhism, it's much more about mindfulness, the idea of ceasing the harmful action immediately to change the state of the self.
So it's less about a past debt and more about present action.
Right. In those Eastern frameworks, forgiveness isn't really a transaction with deity at all. It's a virtue of self-liberation. You forgive to release yourself from the toxicity of anger. It's a kind of internal hygiene.
Okay, so you have these different models. Transfer, return, self-purification.
But here is where the rationalist in me gets excited. The Quranic model, as presented in our source, introduces a code that fundamentally rejects the idea of transferring the debt. But it also rejects the idea that you are helpless.
And this is where the concept of wizard comes in, right?
Exactly. The source cites Surah 6, verse 164. And the core rule is this: no soul bears the burden of another.
That sounds a little lonely.
It sounds lonely if you're looking for a bailout. But if you look at it as a system of agency, it's incredibly empowering. The text calls it the principle of non-transferable burden.
So it just deletes the whole idea of vicarious atonement.
It deletes it entirely. There is no intercessor who can pick up your tab. There is no transfer of guilt to a scapegoat. You are the moral agent. You are born clean. The source is very emphatic about this. No original sin. And you are solely responsible for your output.
So if I break it, I buy it.
You break it, you own it.
Yeah.
And you fix it.
But that brings us right back to that 3-point AM staring at the ceiling feeling. If I can't transfer the debt and the debt is heavy, I mean, what if I've really messed up, if I've ruined a relationship or destroyed my own potential? How do I survive the weight of my own errors?
Right.
If there's no one to take the load off, doesn't the system just crush you?
That is the pivotal question. If you are solely responsible and you are, by definition, fallible, how do you not collapse under the weight of your own humanity? This is where the source introduces the system of support. And to really understand it, we have to look at the Zanb physics.
I love that phrase, Zanb physics. Because usually when we talk about religion, we use these heavy, abstract words like sin and iniquity and transgression. And honestly, they kind of lose their meaning after a while. They just sound like naughty things you shouldn't do.
The source argues exactly that. It says translations like sin are vague, and they lose the powerful specific impact of the original Arabic. So let's look at the word the Quran actually uses for this error. Zanb.
Okay, lay it on me. What does Zanb actually mean?
Lexically, strictly speaking, Zanb means tail.
A tail. Like an animal's tail.
Yes, something that trails behind you.
That is such a strange image for a moral concept. I've committed a tail. It doesn't sound right.
But think about the physics of it. The analogy the source draws is that a sin isn't just an arbitrary black mark on a list that God is checking off somewhere.
It's not a demerit.
It's not a demerit.
Yeah.
It is something you create that attaches to you. It trails behind.
So I do something wrong, and it doesn't just disappear into the past. It becomes this physical weight that drags behind me?
Exactly. It creates drag. The source uses the term atmospheric drag. It describes it as trailing behind in humanity. When you accumulate these negative actions, these Zambis, they create resistance. They slow you down.
So they degrade my aerodynamics as a human being.
That is a perfect way to put it. You become less efficient. Your journey through life becomes harder, takes more energy.
That is a fascinating shift in perspective, because usually we think the danger of sin is that God gets angry and smites us. You know, we think the lightning bolt is coming.
Right, the angry lender.
But this model suggests the danger is actually deterioration.
Precisely. The danger is that you trail behind your own potential. You become sluggish. You lose momentum. The system isn't punishing you because it's offended. The punishment is the drag itself. You can't navigate the world effectively because you are pulling this massive, invisible tail of past mistakes.
It creates turbulence.
Massive turbulence. And that turbulence affects not just you, but everyone around you.
Okay, so we're running through life, accumulating this tail, this drag. The friction is building up. The heat is rising. How do we not just burn up on re-entry? Because if I have enough drag, eventually I stop moving forward altogether.
And that's where we introduce the technology of Ghafarah.
Ghafarah. Okay, this is usually translated as forgiveness.
It is. But again, forgiveness in English usually implies an emotional release. If I say, I forgive you, it means I'm not mad anymore. It means I accept your apology.
Yeah.
But the root of Ghafarah means something very, very physical. It means to cover or to protect.
To protect, not to erase.
Not to erase, to protect. The visual the source gives us is a helmet or a shield.
A helmet.
Think about it. If Zanb is if it's the debris of your past flying up and hitting you, causing friction and heat, then Ghafarah isn't God ignoring the debris. It is God providing a shield against the impact.
Whoa, okay, let me process that for a second. So is divine forgiveness in this model isn't just erasing a line on a ledger.
No.
It's active protection.
It is a containment field. The source is very clear on this. When the user activates the protocol, which we will get to, the system, which is God, deploys Ghafarah, and its function is to shield the agent from the consequences of the tail. It prevents that past drag from destroying your future momentum.
So it lets you keep flying straight even with the tail.
It allows you to keep moving forward despite what you've done.
Yeah.
It neutralizes the negative effects of the past on the present.
That changes the whole vibe of God loves you.
It does. The source actually connects this to verse 3.31. It redefines love, or hub. In the Quranic worldview, love isn't a warm, fuzzy feeling. It is full support.
It's full support.
It implies having a common objective. So when the text says God loves you, it means the system is fully supporting your function. It is lining with you to prevent you from crashing.
So if I can summarize the restoration algorithm so far, I make a mistake. That mistake creates a tail, the Zanb, that causes drag and threatens to ruin my life. I turn back to the system, and the system doesn't just say, it's okay. The system deploys a helmet, Ghafarah, that protects me from the drag so I can keep moving forward.
You've got the schematic. There's a massive but.
There's always a but. If we stop here, this sounds like a cheat code. It sounds like I can do whatever I want, create as much drag as I want, and then just ask for the helmet.
The get-out-of-jail-free card.
Exactly. If I have a magical shield, why should I care about the consequences? Why not just sin, get the helmet, rinse and repeat?
And this is where the rationalist has to drop the hammer. The source material is emphatic. There is no magic wand. We have to talk about the grind. We have to talk about the law of requital.
The law of requital, Jaza, that's that sound from the beginning, isn't it? The grinding.
That's the sound. This is the industrial machinery of the moral universe. The source quotes verse 1.51. Their very deeds fell back upon themselves.
Fell back upon themselves. That sounds like gravity or a boomerang.
It is Newtonian physics applied to morality. Action and reaction. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The source explains that evil actions, specifically termed saya, which means causing imbalance, or idham, which means depleting energy, have a boomerang effect.
So you throw the boomerang, and if you don't catch it, or if you don't have the helmet up, it comes back and hits you right in the face.
It's inescapable. The source uses the phrase non-negotiable. This is why it's not an emotional system. If you act with arrogance, if you think you are self-sufficient, and you ignore the laws, you create instability. That instability must resolve itself. The grind is the inevitable return of your own output.
So the system is just rigged to return our energy back to us. If I put out hate, I get hate. If I put out chaos, I get chaos.
Correct. And it's mechanical. It's not personal. If you jump off a building, gravity isn't punishing you. It's just requiting your action. The system is just balancing the equation that you yourself unbalanced.
Okay, so if it's a law, how do we intervene? If the boomerang is already in the air, how do we get the helmet? What is the input command? Because if it's mechanical, there must be a button to press.
The input command is tauba.
Which we mentioned earlier, usually translated as repentance.
Yes, but the source defines tauba not as feeling sad or, crying in a corner. It defines it as maneuver.
A maneuver, like a tactical maneuver in flight.
Exactly. Tauba literally means turning. It is a shift in trajectory. The source outlines a two-step process in verse 39.54. Step 1, turn and surrender. You have to physically, mentally, and spiritually shift your direction immediately. You have to admit you're going the wrong way and spin the wheel.
A complete 180.
A complete 180. And then step 2, follow the best teaching. You have to align your subsequent actions with the Quran. You can't just say, I turned, and then keep driving off the cliff.
So it's active. It's not just saying, I'm sorry. It's proving I'm changing course.
And here is the kicker. It is time sensitive.
Time sensitive. What do you mean?
Verse 39.54 warns to do this before the period of respite is over. The system has a deadline. There is a window of opportunity where the helmet can be deployed. If you wait until the crash happens, until the doom befalls you, as the translation puts it, it's too late. The physics have already taken over.
That is terrifyingly practical. It's like pulling a parachute. You can't pull the parachute cord after you hit the ground.
You can't. And the source depicts the ultimate failure in Devinger. Verses 39.5659. It's not a scene of hellfire and demons. It's a scene of pure regret. The source describes the person realizing they had wasted their agency.
What do they say?
They say, I wish I had a second chance. I wish I had a helmet. It's the profound realization that the tools were there, the manual was there, but the user was arrogant. They thought they could outsmart the drag.
And the drag won.
The drag always wins if you don't use the helmet.
Okay, so that's the vertical dimension. That's me versus the system. Me versus the law of requital. But we don't live in a vacuum. We live with other people.
Horizontal architecture.
Right. How does this whole helmet and drag concept work between me and my neighbor? If someone creates drag in my life, if they hurt me, steal from me, slander me, do I just offer them a helmet? Do I just forgive and forget?
This is where the source gets really nuanced and I think very practical. It absolutely rejects passive submission. It completely rejects the idea that you should just be a doormat.
Really? Because usually religious texts are big on turn the other cheek.
The Quranic source emphasizes the right to defense. Verse 42.39 uses the word yastansiyarun. It refers to the right to stand up and actively defend against oppression. The text goes so far as to say the oppressed must check the oppressor.
Why must? That sounds aggressive.
To prevent systemic collapse, think about the architecture of it again. If you allow injustice to run rampant without checking it, you are allowing the drag to overtake the whole society. If nobody stops the thief, thievery becomes the norm. The entire system destabilizes. You have a social duty to stop the bleeding.
But wait. The source also talks about forgiveness. So we have a paradox here. How do I stand up and defend myself and also forgive? Aren't those mutually exclusive?
They are choices on a hierarchy, and this is the rationalist synthesis. The source presents a layered approach to justice. Level 1 is justice or requital. You have the right to equalize the equation. Eye for an eye, that is valid. It is fair.
It balances the ledger.
It balances the ledger, but the source warns that retaliation is risky. Verse 42.4 says, requiting evil may become an evil in itself.
Oh, that's interesting, because if I hit you back, I might hit you too hard. And then you feel you have to hit me back, but harder. And now we're just in a cycle.
An escalating cycle of drag. You risk creating a new imbalance. You can accidentally become the very thing you are fighting. So the source introduces level 2, a few, which means pardon, and Allah, which means making peace.
Okay, so why would anyone choose level 2 if level 1 is their right? Why give up your right to justice?
Because it's a strategic choice. You choose to waive a valid right. You are essentially saying, I could crush you for this. I have the legal and moral right to do so. But I am choosing to stop the wheel from spinning.
I am choosing to absorb the drag myself so that it doesn't spread through the rest of the system.
And because you did that, because you bypassed the standard human transactional justice, the source says your reward rests with God.
What does that mean, though? Rest with God, in practical terms.
It means it moves off the human balance sheet entirely. Think of it this way. If you demand justice from a human, you get a human payout. It's limited, it's finite, and frankly, it's often unsatisfying.
Right, revenge doesn't always feel as good as you think it will.
Exactly. But if you forgive, you transfer the debt to the divine system. And the divine system has infinite resources. You are, in effect, investing in a higher yield bond.
That is a very capitalist way to look at mercy. But it makes a certain kind of logical sense. You're trading a short-term, maybe unsatisfying win for a much larger long-term asset.
And speaking of assets, this brings us to the climax of the restoration algorithm. We've talked about the drag, Zanb, the helmet, Ghafarah, and the maneuver, Palba. We've talked about the grind of requital. But there's one more component that is honestly the most, I guess, sci-fi aspect of the whole thing.
I'm ready. What is it?
It's a process called Tabdil al-Sayyat.
Tabdil. And that means?
the transformation of evil deeds.
Transformation. Not deletion, not forgiveness, transformation.
This is where we leave Newtonian physics and enter something more like quantum mechanics. The source cites Surah 25, verse 70. It claims that for those who activate the full protocol repentance plus belief plus righteous work, the system doesn't just delete the bad data.
It doesn't just hit backspace on your life. It doesn't just shred the file.
No, it converts the sayyat, the evil deeds, the imbalances, the dragon to asanat, which are good deeds.
Wait, hold on. How can you change a past event? It happened. It's history. I can't go back in time and not yell at my friend. I can't go back and not steal that thing. The event is fixed in time. The ink is dry.
The event is fixed. You are absolutely right. But the value of the data is mutable.
Explain that. That sounds impossible.
Think about it this way. Imagine you have a massive deficit on your ledger. You are in debt. That's the Zanb. The helmet, Ghafarah, protects you from bankruptcy. A few, wipes the debt to zero. That's great. You're back to neutral.
Okay, neutral is good. Neutral is safe.
Yeah.
I can live with neutral.
But Tabdil takes that deficit. Let's say you were $1 million in debt, and it flips the sign. It turns that $1 million debt into a $1 million credit.
That's impossible. That breaks the laws of mathematics. You can't just turn a negative into a positive.
Not in accounting, no.
Yeah.
But you can in moral energy. Think of the classic ex-smoker analogy.
The ex-smoker.
Who is the most passionate advocate for health? Who is the person most likely to spend their life helping other people quit?
Usually it's the person who used to smoke 2 packs a day.
Exactly. Who is the best drug counselor? Very often, it's the former addict. The darkness of their past, the very sin itself, becomes the fuel for their righteousness. Their intimate experience with the drag makes them more aerodynamic now because they understand the wind. The error becomes the catalyst for a greater good.
Oh, I see. So the magnitude of the mistake can actually determine the magnitude of the positive correction.
Exactly. If you use the energy of that error, the regret, the knowledge, to fuel a massive forward correction, the bad deed has effectively been alchemized into a good deed. The darkness became the necessary precursor to the light. You couldn't be this good now if you hadn't been that bad then.
So the regret I feel about my past isn't just dead weight, it's potential energy. It's a battery waiting to be charged.
It is fuel. But only, and this is the critical part, only if you process it through the algorithm. If you just sit in the guilt, it's drag. If you ignore it, it's a boomerang waiting to hit you. But if you perform tauba, the turn, and then follow with salahat, righteous work, you trigger tabdil.
The deficit becomes an asset.
That is the ultimate promise of the system. It's not just about survival, it's about optimization. It's about taking the broken pieces of your life and building something stronger and more beautiful than the original.
That is a staggering concept. It really takes the idea of redemption and gives it a mechanism. It's not just magic, it's a process. You can see the steps.
And that's really the summary of this entire deep dive, isn't it?
Yeah, let's just look at where we started. We started with this heavy, ancient feeling of debt, the idea that we have to pay. We started with sacrifice and blood and simple transaction.
And we ended with helmets, atmospheric drag, and quantum data transformation.
We ended with a system that seems designed not to crush us, but to, what was the phrase you used earlier? Endow everything with the potential to become what it is meant to be.
That's the core definition of the divine in this text. The source presents this not as religion in the vague mystical sense. It calls these things soon established, unchangeable laws.
Like gravity, like the laws of aerodynamics.
Exactly. The restoration algorithm puts the power entirely in the user's hands.
Yeah.
There is no despair. In fact, verse 39.53 explicitly forbids despair because the machine is always running. It is just waiting for you to input the command.
It's waiting for the turn.
It's waiting for the turn.
You know, it leaves me with a final thought. We usually think of mercy as this soft, warm, perhaps inconsistent thing, like a parent deciding to let you off the hook just because they're in a good mood that day.
Right. It's arbitrary. A mood.
But this source describes mercy as a law, a mechanism, as reliable and predictable as gravity.
Which leads to the final provocation.
If the system is this mechanical, if mercy is a law and not just a mood, does that make it more comforting or more terrifying?
Comforting because it's guaranteed. It's always available if you follow the steps.
But terrifying because it means the machine is always watching and the machine never stops running.
And the drag is always, always calculating.
Something to think about next time you're staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m.
Indeed.
Thanks for diving in with us.
Until next time.